The concept of sovereignty is the basic organizing principle of the global political arena, as having sovereignty provides states with the authority to exercise power at home and to represent their territorial entity within the international community. The flags in this image are here because they highlight how international representation is enabled through a state having sovereignty. The legitimate or widely recognised ability to exercise effective control over a territory within recognised borders. Essentially, this means that a government has the right to command and to be obeyed, to undertake political decisions without hindrance if they believe that it is in the interests of their state. Sovereignty derives authority from some mutually acknowledged source of legitimacy. However, to become sovereign in our contemporary society requires formal recognition from a body like the United Nations. A state can exercise sovereignty in all areas of civil life, culturally, economically, politically. For instance, Australia has the ability to deploy the Navy into Australian waters, to both monitor the state and protect our borders without another state's approval. So this power ensures sovereignty is sought after. Other global actors seek this kind of sovereignty. We see this in the case of the West Papuans and the Palestinians. States desire to acquire sovereignty because it provides them with autonomy in relations with other states and with absolute power in domestic affairs. In this sense, another state cannot be superior if both are equally sovereign. That is, Indonesia couldn't dictate policies in West Papua without challenging their sovereignty, if they too were a sovereign state. Further, sovereignty provides states with the authority to represent themselves within the international community and attain membership in the regimes and organisations that are of substance, such as the UN and ASEAN and others. The picture of Australia you see here is illustrating sovereignty, because what it does is highlight the boundaries and borders within which the government can exercise control. It is showing control over a geographic territory. The desire to attain or maintain sovereignty has been a feature of the global political arena for a long time. However, there are now some current challenges. The first of these is the idea of regional groupings, where a state voluntarily transfers sovereignty upwards to supranational organisations. This is because such organisations provide incentives like free trade agreements. An example of this challenge is present in the EU Parliament's legislation, in particular with regards to fishing quotas. So where such quotas were introduced, there was an expectation that states would adhere to these rules. In fact, in this example, any legislation passed by individual states, like France or Germany, would be secondary to the decisions of the EU Parliament, thus affecting the sovereignty of France and Germany and the other EU states, and diminishing their capacity to undertake a wide range of political decisions. So in this case, the regional grouping laws take precedence over the individual state laws. So it begs the question, why would a state choose to lose or give up sovereignty? Well, with the EU, members allow for the transfer of sovereignty upwards because they believe that any loss is outweighed by the economic and political gains. For example, Ireland's economic growth following entry into the EU is a testament to some of the benefits of subscribing to a regional group. So most challenges to sovereignty arise when an internal group seeks independence, and these can surface internally when border differences occur or when one group refuses to recognise the current borders in place and they seek to change them. An example is the West Papuan people who desire secession. This is a challenge because if they were to secede and form their own state, the West Papuan state, then Indonesia would have no authority over that territory. However, more rarely in the contemporary world, sovereignty can also be challenged externally by another state. A prominent example that we have studied this year is the 2003 invasion of Iraq by the coalition of the willing and the US. For the most part, contemporary global political arena is absent of these kind of incidents, with states preferring to use diplomacy and diplomatic means to avoid the enormous human and economic costs of war. However, often these disputes arise over land, whether it belongs in one state or another state's territory. So, these are challenges to sovereignty because they undermine the territorial integrity of the state and do not acknowledge the geographic territory within which a sovereign state can exercise power. Finally, global crises can also challenge state sovereignty. Matters that were once considered the domain of simply domestic affairs of one state are increasingly the subject of global concern, especially when they create destabilizing consequences. The threat of nuclear weapons is one example. So with regards to nuclear proliferation, the international community has responded by adopting the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, whereby states agree not to develop nuclear weapons and the nuclear weapon states agree to disarm, thus ensuring that nuclear technology can be used for peaceful purposes only. Now, this is also a challenge to sovereignty, because now nuclear weapons, which could be used as a means of deterring attacks and defending one's states, can no longer be created. So in this case, states who agree are abiding by a form of global government. Furthermore, conditions can also be imposed on a state by the international community. For example, UN sanctions can limit the sphere of actions available to one state, and thus their ability to exercise effective control within their territory or to meet their citizens' needs.